Okay. Well, hello. Welcome back to Coffee with the Mayor, the podcast that keeps you updated and caffeinated with the City of Hillsboro, Kansas. I'm Mayor Lou Thurston, as always. I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Matt Stiles, our city administrator. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Colin Hansen, the CEO and general manager of KPP Energy, to discuss all things public power and the upcoming Public Power Week. We'll start off this updated reboot with a fun news segment, or we think it's going to be fun anyway, for our show today called The Mayor's Mugshots. It's pretty easy to follow, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. So I have here in my mug coffee flavored coffee, which is my favorite kind, actually. I'm not too big on anything elaborate or exotic, but I do love coffee, and the coffee here at Rhubarb Market is pretty darn good. So Matt, what are you sipping?
So the secret is that I'm not a caffeine guy.
Yeah.
Got some stomach stuff, so can't do caffeine.
Okay.
Only caffeine
All right.
once a day. Right now I've got a decaf Americano with oat milk because I'm fancy like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I usually do. I'm the same way. I kind of like coffee, but I like espresso, so I want coffee.
Yeah. Okay. You like the strong flavor?
I like the strong.
Yeah, okay.
So
Okay.
that's what I do, and yeah, I'm always a decaf guy. And,
Well,
sometimes in the morning and not so much, but yeah.
I guess we all got our cross to bear, right?
I know.
So, Colin, tell us what you're drinking today.
Yeah, so I'm actually having a cappuccino. My secret, unlike Matt's secret, is that I'm highly caffeinated at all times. I try to be better once I hit the noon hour so that I can try to get to sleep before 3 a.m. But
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
yeah, I love a good cappuccino, and this is one of the best ones I've had.
Well, that's
So,
good to hear. So
yeah.
you've been drinking cappuccino for a few years?
A few years.
Okay.
And my kids are all coffee people, so they got me started on the fancier side
Okay.
of coffee a few years ago.
So you got one of those really high-end coffee making machines at home?
Not really. I have more of the coffee flavored coffee.
Okay. All right.
And save the fancy stuff for the professionals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Colin, the first question we got for you is a bit about you and your history and your current role at KPP Energy.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I am the general manager and CEO of KPP Energy, and that's a job I've had for 2.5 years now.
Mhm.
Something I've really enjoyed. It's fun to get involved even more in the electric industry and actually get involved in some projects where steel goes in the ground. And so
Okay.
we've got a couple of fun projects that would love to share some information with you guys about.
Sure,
At some point. And
Well, I think we'll
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit later
Sure.
in this
yeah.
interview. But anyway, where are you from?
So I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
So I'm an Iowa kid that ended up in Kansas. So I'm thoroughly Midwestern.
Yeah, all right.
In fact, all my family comes from Nebraska. So
Okay.
between Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas, I've got the Midwest.
Well, yeah,
almost
you
covered.
got it
Yeah.
locked in. Yeah.
So I ended up being a mechanical engineer out of Iowa State
Mhm.
and got an MBA from Drake University in Des Moines. And then for, I guess, 22 years before making the jump to KPP, I was the executive director of Kansas Municipal Utilities, or KMU, which is the State Trade Association for Municipal Utilities. So, been a public power guy my entire
There you go.
career.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. So, speaking of public power, what a lot of people may not understand what public power is and why it's different from other utility types of companies that are out there, like investor owned or maybe the cooperatives and so forth.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I've been in public power my entire career. So I'm obviously very biased, but I think our business model is the best business model.
Right.
One of the biggest differences between, our colleagues are in the electric industry is that we, number one, are not for profit. So any of the margins, if you will, from an electric rate or electric bill get funneled back into the community instead of going off to some shareholder somewhere,
Sure.
well outside of the community. So there's the not-for-profit piece, and then the big piece I think is the community-owned piece.
Yeah.
It is the citizens of the community that actually own the electric utility, and so as a citizen, you have a say in what your electric utility, how they operate, what they invest in, what type of electricity, all those sorts of things, which I think is really one of the most rewarding parts of public power.
Sure. And a little bit later, we'll talk about a little bit more about KPP and what that's all about. But, Hillsboro, just so everybody understands, Hillsboro's a member city we're one of 22 Kansas cities that make up KPP Energy. And so that's where we pool our assets and our resources to buy and provide public power to our citizens.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to segment 2 now, which we're going to start calling News on the Brew. That's going to, want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world and in the United States. And of course, today is we're filming this on 9/11, which is a pretty important day in our country. And for the past 23 years, it's been something that just has changed almost everything in our country. And, we, especially today, we want to remember those that lost their lives, the families that were impacted forever. And just, we want to thank too, all the first responders that go out there and run towards the trouble and protect us and keep us safe. So we want to thank those folks, but, I wanted to ask if you can, I think just like a lot of people, where were you on 9/11? What do you remember about that day?
Yeah. I was working for the Kansas Municipal Utilities in the town of McPherson at the time. And, I remember someone saying that a plane had hit the trade center. I remember thinking, well, it's probably like a small type of plane. And then once learned the actual news, became very, for everyone, very disturbing, very real. I happened to have my father lived in New Jersey at the time and was supposed to be in New York City that day, and actually on a train that would pass underneath the trade center. And then my brother worked about a mile from the Pentagon in DC.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a lot of time trying to get through very crowded phone lines to make sure the family was safe. Yeah.
How long did it take to find out that they were okay?
Until the afternoon.
Yeah.
Actually. So
wow.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
So I was a sophomore in college. I remember very distinctly I was in biology lab. I had foolishly signed up for a 7:30 biology lab. And so we were just kind of getting out of biology lab, and there was a lot of monitors around it, which was kind of weird at the time because it was early 2000s.
Yeah.
Not like a thing that we see now. There's monitors everywhere. And they had these TVs out in the hallway. And I just remember going out there. It's the first time I'd ever seen them showing anything other than propaganda for the school.
Yeah.
And so, there's just this picture in my head of the first tower, and it's got smoke coming off of it. And you're just like, what is happening? What is going on? And I went home. By the time I got home, the radio was picking up the second plane hit, and so everything was kind of just wild. It was crazy. And I ended up going to work that day. I was working at a sub shop actually down the street, and I remember it's just like panic, just like this weird sense of panic and like, what is happening? I don't even know anymore. And I remember talking to some friends actually that went to Tabor at the time. They were same age, sophomores. They're like, man, is this going to be World War III? What is happening here? I don't, we just didn't. It was, you can't underscore, and no one, if you weren't there, you didn't want a part of it. It's really hard to get a reference for that. And just like how disconcerting that was at the time, and how much everything kind of changed from that point forward. So it was, I remember very vividly those just looking at that screen in my biology. What about you, Lou?
Well, I was working in Wichita, down southeast corner of Wichita, in a little area called Schulte, if anybody knows where that is. And we were getting set to have a quarterly business review with one of our larger customers, was actually Hospira out of McPherson, and they were coming down for the quarterly business review. And I also, like you, Colin, heard that a plane had hit the tower, and I as well assumed it was a small civilian aircraft, and it was obviously much more than that. And so instead of our business review, we ended up sitting in our conference room watching it on the television. And, it was just very somber. We didn't end up talking about any business. We just kind of watched it for a while, and then they got back in their car and headed back to McPherson, and I was scheduled actually to drive to Omaha that afternoon. So I left the plan and came back to Hillsboro to fuel up and get my suitcase to head up to Omaha. And could not believe it, but there were actually lines at the gas stations in Hillsboro, and people were just panicking. I mean, everybody was like, what's happening? We got to fuel up our vehicles. And I just thought to myself, this is crazy. And then I heard that President Bush was off at Air Force Base in Omaha, and I thought, that's not the right place to go right now either,
Right.
So I just made a phone call and I said, hey, I think we're going to wait and reschedule this trip. So
Wow.
that was my day. But to come back to Hillsboro and just see that kind of reaction was pretty sobering. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what are some of the biggest challenges that are currently facing power utilities in the U.S. I know there's a lot.
Yeah, no, there certainly are. It's funny because I've heard people that worked in the utility industry 20, 30 years ago talk about how they got into this business because it was stable. It was actually kind of boring, and that is not the way that the electric industry is right now. We're in a time of some pretty tremendous change, and there are lots of challenges out there. Everything from new environmental regulations that you need to constantly be adapting to. We've had supply chain issues coming out of the pandemic of trying to even be able to get the equipment that we need to deliver electricity to a consumer. And really one of the biggest issues I think for us at KPP is how do we find that next source of energy? In fact, we did a strategic plan, as you know, Mayor, last year, and we ended up with 3 high-level objectives. And 2 of those 3 are focused on how do we evaluate the generation that we have right now, and how do we add new generation. And so, we've seen a situation in a lot of cases where you've got a lot of growth in electric demand, whether it's for data centers, AI, what have you, at the same time that you're having a lot of generation, most notably coal-fired power plants that are being retired, and so trying to figure out not only how do you backfill that gap, but how do you get the next level of growth, whether that's wind, solar, natural gas, diesel, nuclear. That to me is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
What do you think about nuclear? I mean, there's always like the not in my backyard, and it's totally different than it was before. But
it really is. I mean, there are some really exciting new technologies that are coming up with nuclear in terms of the small modular reactors.
Yeah.
Certainly you see it being used quite effectively in the Navy and other applications.
For years.
Right.
We're finally seeing some of the bigger nuclear power plants becoming commercially operated, which takes 10, 15, 20 years, and generally speaking, billions of dollars in overrun to get there. But I think if the industry, if the country is serious about getting to a place of zero greenhouse gas emissions, nuclear has to be a part of that story.
Yeah.
So
we just got to get over the fear. It is safe. It's safe technology.
Yeah, especially the newer stuff is. The old stuff was incredibly safe, but the new stuff is even much more so.
Keep up with it, and you don't end up with Godzilla if you take care of everything, right? And
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, obviously nuclear is one part of that mix, but how do you see the role of public power evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in light of the technological advancements that are going on, with like smart grids, the push for greener energy, those kinds of things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I mentioned already, I'm very biased when it comes to talking about public power, but I am extremely bullish on what it what it means to be in public power and as running a public power entity right now. Back in the old days, it was a disadvantage to be small. When you had to figure out how to get a contract with the big local utility, you weren't in a place of power. But first off, grouping together through a joint action agency like KPP brings some power, unintended, I guess, to these communities. But the other part of it that I think is really exciting is being small is not an impediment anymore. It's actually kind of an advantage. You're able to be nimble. You're able to get into some technologies that it's just harder for the larger guys to do sometimes. So really, really excited about the future of public power, and you see it being played out by having a number of cities across the United States that are looking at trying to create their own public power system. And so those cities that actually have one and have had one for decades or maybe even a century or more, I think they're in a really strong position.
Yeah, I agree. So, kind of a segue off of that, what are some of the projects, partnerships, maybe collaborations that KPP is pursuing and to enhance our resilience, reliability?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I started to kind of allude to those earlier. We've got a couple really big projects for us that we're excited about. For us, everything comes back to affordability and reliability to the end consumer. So to the best of our ability, we try to stay laser focused on those two things. I think there is a third leg of that stool, and that's responsibility and sustainability to the extent that we can. Again, staying laser focused on the affordability and the reliability piece. But to that end, we've got two of probably the biggest projects that KPP has done in their 20 years of operation. One is a solar project. We will be installing solar farms in 7 of our communities.
Hillsboro being one of those.
Exactly. So we're very, very excited about it.
So are we.
Yeah. We were able to get a grant/loan from the Rural Utility Service, which will be a low interest loan, 20% forgiveness right off the top, and partner that with some other tax vehicles. It could be a very low cost source of power for not only the citizens of Hillsboro, but all of KPP's membership. So that's one of our projects that we hope, knock on wood, we're getting very close on turning some dirt on.
Yeah.
And then our other really big one is a natural gas diesel dual fuel power plant that will be located in the city of Winfield. I mentioned before the need for energy, the need for capacity. We also need that capacity to be able to hit that reliability metric that I mentioned before.
So this is not only dual fuel generation, but it's also what they call quick start technology, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it in a lot of ways, it enables more investment by other entities in wind or solar, which, those intermittent technologies need something like this power plant to be able to instantly, like you said, Mayor, turn on and shore up the system and keep the lights on.
Right. So it makes a lot of sense to invest in that technology, and I think to KPP and its members stead, the investment in technology. You mentioned the solar project, but we also installed a battery storage project up in the city of Minneapolis here about a year ago. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's another really fun project that we got to bring online a couple of years ago. It's located in the city of Minneapolis, Kansas. It's actually in their substation, where you've got a lot of that type of equipment already. But historically, city of Minneapolis was on a transmission line that was kind of aged and needs to be upgraded. And so in the middle of summer, to maintain their voltage and provide uninterrupted service to their citizens, they would have to turn on some pretty expensive generators and have those operating through the summer. And so, by putting these batteries in there, it's a 1 megawatt. So instantaneously, it can put out 1 megawatt, and then in terms of energy, it can do 4 megawatt hours. So, it's essentially equivalent to having enough batteries to run 250 homes, and it gives the city the ability to like turn it on, turn it off, and shore up the voltage in town. So it's saved the city of Minneapolis, a fair amount of money. And in turn the members of KPP quite a bit of money too.
I don't know at the time. I think at the time that we installed that, it was the largest battery storage system in the state of Kansas, was it not?
It was, and
Is that
really,
still the case?
honestly, I think we might have been supplanted by someone else by now,
Yeah.
but we were one of the first in actually the
Yeah.
whole 17 state SPP footprint to be in the market at SPP, which was pretty big
Pretty crazy,
accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's 17 states in the Southwest Power Pool. Everybody kind of think whenever I hear Southwest Power Pool, I still have like nightmare returns of Storm Uri, where Texas was not and everything. But yeah, I mean that's a huge deal as far as the 17 states there. And talk a little bit about that. I mean, we're members of SPP, and so how does that work for people?
Yeah, it's really, it gets a little complicated to try to explain. I mean, they have what they call the integrated market, which essentially means that this organization has the ability to turn on whatever generators you might own or someone else might own, but what that enables them to do and what benefit it brings us is the lowest cost generator is the one that is being asked to generate. And so I mean, that market has been very positive for KPP members. We're able to take wind energy when wind energy is inexpensive. We're able to generate electricity and offer it into that same market when prices are high. It's
give and take there. It's always and we have experts who do that. So the city's not doing that. Cities individually, we have geniuses over
right,
KPP.
exactly.
And it's a complicated market, and there's just a lot of moving pieces. And I don't know if people really understand, how that stuff works. You flip the lights on, they come on. That's what we get. But, when it doesn't work, everybody lets you know, but you maybe not know all the pieces of how we get power.
Sure.
So that's when we talk like Public Power Week and trying to talk about people and so just explain that. It's complicated. Talk about it in the easiest way you can, right? So
it's if we're doing our job right, we're largely unnoticed.
That's it.
You walk into a room, you don't even think about turning the light switch on. It's just there.
Right.
And so that's one of the really neat things about being in the electric industry is people count on you for their day-to-day well-being. It's
long-term Hillsboro, to provide a little history. Hillsboro used to be a generating city. We used to have our own electric generation, and at some point in time, we decided it was in our best interest to supplant that and get rid of that. And we turned our power plant into our water treatment plant, and that hasn't been a bad decision. I mean, that's worked out well. But you and I have had this discussion a few times, and so Matt, you and I have too. Is it time for us to consider getting back in the generation business in some fashion? And obviously the 1 megawatt solar portion of the solar project that would be out here is one way to provide some generation, but maybe there's some backup generation or some other types of things that we want to be looking at in the future. And so we're definitely going to be keeping our eye on it, right?
Absolutely. No, I mean, there's a lot of value to having that local generation, whether it's the ice storm that knocks down the line coming into town or the incumbent utility that's providing transmission service into your town. When that's not available, having that backup generation, particularly in times of really frigid cold or extreme heat, it's very valuable.
Well, we definitely experienced that
2 years, 3 years ago.
No,
2 years.
2 years
Around Christmas time.
Coldest day of the year, and it didn't have to be out very long, and we had a lot of lines freeze up. We had a lot of water damage, and it was a bad deal. So Public Power Week is coming up. We talked about that a little bit. Let's talk about Public Power Week. So what's the message that you think we need to be sending out for Public Power Week? I mean, that's 1 week that we're trying to promote, we're trying to educate, we're trying to get people to understand where that electricity comes from when they flip the switch. But what message would you like to send, relative to public power?
I was at a meeting just a few weeks ago, and there was a person from the American Public Power Association talking, and one of his comments that really took me back was that over half of the customers, they did a survey, and over half of the customers that are served by a public power system don't realize that they're served by the public power system. And so they don't know about the not-for-profit aspect. They don't know about the locally controlled, locally owned aspects of it. So for me, Public Power Week is a lot about education. Make sure that the citizens know what value they've got and what a benefit that they've got that a lot of your sister communities do not. I've long said this and continue to say it, but I still maintain that you can get in a car and drive across Kansas and go in and through a town and know if it's got a public power system. There's just there's a pride in the community. There are dollars that are coming back to the community through the electric utility. There's just a huge benefit to being a public power city.
And I can certainly validate that, and I can also send out some thanks to my predecessors and Matt, our predecessors, that had the foresight to actually join up and be part of KPP. That's been a tremendous benefit. You mentioned Winter Storm Uri, and a lot of utility companies almost went bust, because of the financial impact. And KPP had set up funds for emergencies such as that, and we really, quote unquote, weathered that storm probably better than almost anybody around. So,
and I think you're spot on, and even more so, you see a lot of utilities that face these extraordinary costs that are only now beginning to recoup them. And so you've got utility customers that will be paying those costs for 5, 7, 10 years, whereas in our case, we've been very fortunate that those costs are completely recouped and we're ready to move forward.
Yeah, so, very good. Yeah. Well, Colin, I guess that kind of wraps it up for this episode. We really thank you for joining us today. And we just again want to emphasize the importance of and value of public power. To learn, if you're interested in learning more about KPP and how Hillsboro plays a role in that, be sure to go to their website at www.kpp.agency. That's the website. So also want to give a special shout out and thanks to Tim and Alyssa Unruh for letting us film this in their beautiful coffee house, Rhubarb Market. I think you've kind of been enjoying the decor and in addition to the coffee, right?
It's a beautiful place and some great coffee.
So if you can make it, come on down and give them a visit. I promise it's worth every second. So join us the last Friday of every month for Coffee with the Mayor, where conversations keep brewing and community keeps growing. See you next time.